The auction hall was filled with noise. Bright lights shone down on a raised stage where slaves were sold to the highest bidder. The crowd was made of alien nobles and merchants, all dressed in fine robes and glittering ornaments. They talked loudly, laughed at each other's jokes, and shouted their prices as slaves were brought one by one. On the stage stood a girl. She was small, thin, and her clothes were nothing more than torn fabric barely covering her body. Chains wrapped around her wrists and ankles. Her head was bowed, and her long silver hair covered most of her face. The auctioneer pulled her forward roughly and forced her to look at the crowd. "This one," the auctioneer shouted, his voice echoing across the chamber. "Young, still strong enough to work? Who will start the bidding?" The crowd looked at her and immediately began to whisper. Some laughed. Some shook their heads. "She looks too weak. Her eyes, empty, worthless. No use. I wouldn't take her even for free." The girl trembled. Her heart pounded in her chest. She had already been moved from one place to another, from one cruel master to another. And now, when her own family had sold her away, she stood in front of strangers who mocked her openly. Her lips trembled as she tried to breathe. She thought of the home she once had, of the warm meals and the sound of her mother's voice, but those memories were gone now. Her family had abandoned her like trash. She lowered her gaze to the floor, wishing it would open and swallow her. The auctioneer slapped the chain to make her raise her head again. "Come on, people! Who will take her? She may not look like much, but she can still serve. Start the bidding at 10 credits. Silence, no hands rose, no voices called out. The auctioneer's smile faded. His sharp teeth showed as he grew angry. 7 credits. 5 credits. Anything. The crowd only laughed. One alien shouted, "Not even 1 credit. She is useless." Another added, "Throw her out to the streets." The girl's chest tightened. She felt her body shake harder. She wanted to scream, but no sound came. The weight of humiliation crushed her. No one wanted her. No one. At that moment, she noticed something strange. Among the crowd of aliens, there was one figure who looked different. He stood at the back, silent, his arms crossed. His eyes were calm, sharp, and human. Unlike the others, he did not laugh. He did not mock. He simply watched. The auctioneer was losing patience. "Are you all blind? Even trash can serve some purpose. Someone make an offer." Still no answer. The girl closed her eyes. She thought this was the end. They would throw her away, leave her to die in some dark alley. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered to herself, "I am nothing." And then it happened. A voice cut through the laughter. "I'll take her." The hall fell silent. Every head turned. The human at the back had raised his hand. His voice was steady, clear, and without hesitation. The crowd burst into laughter. A human? Buying this trash? Truly pathetic. He must be desperate. The auctioneer's eyes widened in surprise, but quickly he smiled again.
"Ah, finally."
"Sold to the human." The chain was handed over. The girl was pushed from the stage toward the man who had just claimed her. Her knees felt weak and she almost fell, but he caught her gently by the arm. She looked up at him through her messy hair. For the first time, she saw his face closely. His eyes were warm, not cruel. His grip was firm but not painful. She whispered, her voice shaky. Why would you take me?" The human looked down at her, his expression unreadable. "Because no one else did." The words echoed in her mind. She could not understand them. Why would anyone choose someone like her, unwanted and broken? Yet there was no laughter in his tone, no mockery in his eyes. As they walked out of the hall, the aliens behind them jeered, shouting insults and jokes. But the human ignored them. He walked calmly, leading her out into the cool night air. For the girl, the moment felt unreal. Just a few minutes ago, she was nothing more than a worthless object. Now someone had chosen her. Someone had spoken for her. Her chains were still heavy. Her past was still painful. But for the first time in years, a small spark lit inside her chest. A spark of hope. And though she could not say it yet, deep in her heart she felt a question rising. Had her life just changed forever? The market outside the auction hall was loud, full of merchants selling food, tools, and weapons. But behind the heavy doors, the auctioneer still tried to keep his show alive. He shouted, waved his arms, and forced the alien girl forward again. The girl's chains rattled as she stumbled, her knees weak. The crowd had already decided she was worthless. They talked loudly, not caring if she could hear. She will collapse after a single day of work. Her bones look fragile. Why would anyone waste even one coin? Every word pierced her heart. She wanted to vanish into the floor. Her lips trembled, but no one cared. The auctioneer raised his voice again. 4 credits. 3, someone, anyone. The silence was heavy. Then laughter filled the room again. She's not even worth the chain she's wearing, a fat alien shouted. Better to throw her in the junkyards. Another called. The girl's eyes blurred with tears. She was sure this was the end. She would be discarded, left to rot in the cold streets. Her family had thrown her away, and now even strangers rejected her. There was no place for her in this galaxy, but then a quiet sound broke through the noise. I'll take her. The words were calm, spoken without pride or mockery. The laughter stopped at once. Dozens of alien eyes turned toward the back of the hall. There stood a man. He was human. His broad shoulders and simple clothes made him look plain compared to the richly dressed nobles. His face was steady, his dark eyes fixed on the girl. Unlike the others, he did not smirk or laugh. He only raised his hand firmly, declaring his choice. The hall erupted in chaos. A human? Buying her? That broken thing? He must have lost his mind. The auctioneer blinked, stunned, then forced a smile. At last sold. Sold to the human. His voice shook with both relief and disbelief. The girl froze. She could hardly breathe. Her wide eyes stared at the human. Why would he do this? Why waste money on her, when even her own people refused? Guards pulled her forward roughly, shoving her off the stage. She stumbled, almost falling face first, but the human stepped forward quickly. His hand caught her arm before she could hit the floor. His touch was strong but gentle, not cruel like the auctioneer's. For the first time, someone had stopped her from falling. The girl's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her heart pounded with confusion. The auctioneer handed the chain to the human with a smirk. She's yours now. Don't say I didn't warn you. She's useless, the human didn't answer. He simply took the chain and turned away. The crowd roared with laughter. The human buys garbage. Pathetic. Let him waste his money. But the man ignored them. He walked calmly toward the exit, holding the chain lightly so she could follow. The girl's feet dragged as she walked behind him. She kept her head low, not daring to meet his eyes. Her voice trembled when she finally whispered, "Why?" The human glanced at her. His eyes were calm, not cruel. Because no one else would. The answer was simple, yet heavy with meaning. The girl stared at him, her mind spinning. No one else would. Was that the only reason? Or was there something more behind his quiet voice? They stepped out of the auction hall. The night air was cool, and the stars above looked brighter than the torches inside. The noise of the laughing crowd faded behind them. The girl inhaled sharply. For the first time in years, she felt air that did not smell of chains, dirt, or cages. But she dared not hope. She feared this human might turn out like the others, cruel, mocking, or ready to abandon her when she failed. Her steps slowed. You will regret this, she whispered, almost to herself. The man looked down at her again. His face remained calm. Maybe, but not tonight. The words sent a strange warmth through her chest. She didn't understand it. She had lived too long with rejection to trust kindness easily. They reached a small transport park near the edge of the market. It was plain, scratched by travel, but clean. He opened the door and motioned for her to step in. She hesitated. I don't understand you. He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, You don't need to. Not yet. Inside the vehicle, the girl sat on the edge of the seat, her chains clinking softly. She hugged her knees, staring at the floor. She could still hear the cruel laughter of the crowd echoing in her head. Yet she could not forget the way his hand had caught her when she almost fell. The human started the engine and the ship hummed to life. The market lights grew smaller as they lifted into the sky. The girl glanced at him again. Her fear was still strong, but something inside her chest flickered like a tiny flame. A question she dared not ask out loud burned in her mind. Could this be the beginning of something different? The small transport hummed as it moved away from the auction city. Through the window, the girl could still see the tall towers glowing with neon lights. Behind those walls, she had been sold like an object. Now she sat in silence, her chains heavy on her wrists. The human drove without speaking. His face was calm, his hands steady on the controls. To the girl, his silence felt strange. Other masters always barked orders, shouted insults, or cursed at her for breathing too loudly. This one said nothing. Her eyes shifted to him, then quickly back to the floor. She was afraid to speak, yet the question pressed inside her chest until she could no longer keep it in. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would you buy me? The man did not look at her immediately. For a long moment, only the sound of the engine filled the air. Finally, he said, because no one else would. His words were the same as before, simple and calm. But now they carried more weight. The girl trembled. Her lips formed another question. But I'm useless. Everyone knows. He finally turned his head, his eyes meeting hers. His gaze was sharp but not cruel. Do you believe that? She flinched. No one had ever asked her what she believed. Her whole life, others had decided for her. Her family, her owners, the crowd. Her answer slipped out in a whisper. Yes. The human's eyes softened, but his voice stayed firm. Then maybe it's time you stop listening to them. The words confused her. She hugged her knees tighter, afraid of the hope that stirred inside. She didn't want hope. Hope had always betrayed her. The transport landed on a quiet plain outside the city. The ground was soft with grass and the stars above shone clear. The human opened the door and stepped out. He turned, holding a hand toward her. She hesitated. Why are we here? To walk, he said simply. Her heart raced. Walk? No master had ever let her out freely before. She looked at his hand, unsure if it was a trick. Slowly, shaking, she placed her chained hand into his. The air outside was fresh and cool. The girl's bare feet touched the grass, soft against her skin. She almost cried from the strange sensation. For years, she had only known dirt floors and stone cages. The human released her hand and walked beside her. He said nothing, only moved slowly, as if he knew she needed time to adjust. The silence between them was not heavy like before. It was gentle, like space made for her to breathe. She took cautious steps. 1 step, 2 steps, then 3. Each step felt unreal. Her chains rattled, but she no longer heard only their weight. She heard the sound of her own movement, the proof that she was walking freely, even if only for a moment. Her throat tightened. I don't understand you, she whispered again. The man stopped and turned to her. You don't have to. He studied her face carefully. You just need to know one thing. You are not trash. The words hit her like a blow. Not trash. No one had ever said that to her. Everyone had always called her worthless, broken, unwanted. Her chest shook, and before she could stop it, tears rolled down her cheeks. She covered her face quickly. Don't say things like that, she begged. It hurts. The man frowned slightly. Why does it hurt? Because... Her voice cracked. Because I want to believe you. But I can't. The human stood quietly for a moment, then crouched down so his eyes were level with hers. You don't have to believe me now. Just remember I said it. That's enough. His voice was steady, almost gentle. The girl lowered her hands slowly, staring at him. In his eyes, she saw no pity, no cruelty, only truth. She sniffled and turned her gaze to the sky. The stars glittered above, endless and free. For the first time, she wondered if maybe freedom was not just a dream. The man stood and looked at her chains. These should be gone, he muttered. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small tool. With a few clicks, the locks opened. The chains fell from her wrists and ankles, landing in the grass with a dull sound. She gasped, clutching her freed arms. She had worn chains for so long that her skin bore deep marks. She touched them, hardly believing. You freed me, she whispered. The man shook his head. Not yet. Freedom is more than broken chains. But this is a start. Her heart beat faster. She stared at the fallen chains, then at the man who had removed them. Something inside her stirred. A small flame she thought had died long ago. They continued walking across the plain. For the first time in years, her steps were light. The grass brushed her ankles and the stars seemed closer. She still feared the future, still feared disappointment. But tonight, for a few stolen minutes, she felt something she had almost forgotten existed. She felt alive. And though she could not say the words out loud, she realized a truth deep in her chest. This human was different. The night grew colder as they walked across the plain. The stars burned like white fires above, silent witnesses to two lonely souls moving side by side. The girl's chains were gone, yet the marks on her skin throbbed as if her body still remembered the weight. She walked a little behind him, afraid to stand fully at his side. Each step was hesitant, as if freedom itself might vanish if she moved too quickly. But the human's presence was steady, like a wall that would not crumble. After a long silence, her eyes wandered to his hands. His knuckles were rough, his fingers marked by old scars. She frowned. Scars were not strange, many slaves bore them. But his scars were different. They were not the scars of a beaten man. They were the scars of someone who had fought. Her voice was quiet, almost shy. You've been hurt before." The man glanced at her, then down at his hands. He did not hide them. Yes, she hesitated, then asked why. He walked a few more steps before answering. His voice was calm, but there was something heavy in it. "Because I chose to fight." The girl's chest tightened. She had never chosen to fight. She had only ever endured. She looked at him with confusion. "Did you win?" The man gave a small, sad smile. "Sometimes. Sometimes not." He stopped walking and sat on a low rock, motioning for her to sit too. She obeyed, though her body was tense. The grass brushed against her bare feet, and for once she didn't feel dirty sitting on the ground. The human rolled up his sleeve slowly, revealing more scars along his forearm. Some were thin lines, others deep and ragged. The girl's eyes widened. She had seen slaves beaten, but she had never seen marks like these. They told stories of battles she could not imagine. "Long ago," he said quietly, "I lost someone. She was someone I swore to protect. But I failed." The girl stared, her lips parting slightly. She did not know what to say. His eyes, dark and distant, gazed at the stars as he continued. "After that, I decided, if I ever had the chance to stop it from happening again, I would. No matter what others said." The girl's voice shook. "Is that why you bought me?" He looked at her, and for a moment his gaze was sharp, almost fierce. "Yes, because I will not stand by and watch someone thrown away again." Her heart pounded. She dropped her eyes quickly, hiding behind her messy hair. She was not used to such words. They scared her, but not because they were cruel, because they were kind. Too kind. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of wind brushing the grass. Finally, she whispered, "I don't deserve it." The man's expression hardened. "No one deserves chains." The words hit her like a storm. She wanted to argue, to say she was weak, worthless, broken, but his voice left no space for doubt. His conviction was so strong that it shook the walls inside her heart. Her eyes filled with tears. She turned her face away, ashamed of her weakness. But then she noticed something she had missed before. Across his cheek was another scar, faint but long, cutting through his skin. Without thinking, she asked softly, "Did it hurt?" He blinked, surprised by her question. "What?" "The scar on your face. Did it hurt?" For a moment, the hardness in his eyes melted. He chuckled, low and quiet. "Yes, more than I'd like to admit." The girl's lips trembled. She had never spoken to a master this way. Yet with him, the words slipped out without permission. She felt safe enough to ask, safe enough to look. You're not like them," she whispered. The man tilted his head. "Them?" "The others. The crowd. My family." Her voice shook as she forced the words out. "Everyone else saw me as trash, but you don't." He studied her carefully. His gaze was heavy but not cruel. Finally, he said, "Because you're not." Her breath caught. She turned away quickly, pressing her hands to her chest as if to stop her heart from breaking open. She wanted to scream, to deny his words, but deep inside, a fragile part of her longed to believe him. They sat in silence for a long while. The girl hugged her knees, trying to hide her face. The human leaned back against the rock, eyes closed as if resting. Yet even in silence, his presence felt like a shield between her and the cruel world. When she finally dared to speak again, her voice was small. "What's your name?" He opened his eyes, watching her carefully. "Does it matter?" She frowned. "Yes, it does." He was quiet for a moment, then answered, "Call me Aaron." Aaron. The name rolled across her lips silently. She tucked it away in her heart like a treasure. For years, no name had ever meant safety to her. Now maybe one did. The night wind grew stronger and the grass whispered around them. For the first time, the girl felt the world outside her cage was real. But in the shadows beyond the plain, something else stirred. The past was not finished with her, and soon both she and Aaron would face it together. The plain was silent except for the whisper of the grass. Aaron and the girl sat close to the small fire he had built. Its orange glow touched their faces, pushing the cold night away. For the girl, it was the first time in years she had felt warmth without pain, but peace never lasted long in her life. Far away beyond the plains, The auction city still roared with noise. The laughter of nobles echoed in the night, but among them anger burned. The auctioneer paced his office, furious that a human had humiliated him in front of the crowd. To lose money was one thing, but to lose respect, unforgivable. She was nothing, he growled. Trash. And yet that human dared to buy her, dared to mock me. A group of armed enforcers stood waiting. Their leader, a tall alien with a scarred jaw, grinned. Shall we bring her back, master? We will teach the human a lesson. The auctioneer slammed his hand on the table. Yes, bring them both. Alive if you can, dead if you must. On the plains, the girl shifted uneasily. She hugged her knees as the fire crackled. Her mind should have been calm, but her body trembled. It was as if the chain still clung to her, whispering that she would never be free. Aaron noticed. His eyes narrowed as he watched the horizon. You feel it too? She blinked. Feel what? He pointed toward the distant lights of the city. They won't let this go. Her stomach turned to ice. She knew he was right. The auctioneer would never forgive being shamed. She lowered her head, guilt crushing her chest. You should have left me. Now you're in danger too. Aaron's jaw tightened. I chose this. Not you, but... Her voice cracked. They'll kill you because of me. He looked at her firmly. No, they'll try. But I won't let them. His words were steady, but she could hear the steel in them. She stared at him in disbelief. No one had ever spoken like that for her. Not family, not strangers. It was as if he had taken her burden and claimed it as his own. Hours later, the silence broke. From the darkness came the low hum of engines. Red lights cut through the grass. The girl froze, her heart hammering in her chest. Shapes moved closer. Vehicles, armed enforcers, the same ones who had once laughed at her. The girl's breath came fast. She grabbed Aaron's arm desperately. They've come for me? Aaron rose slowly, pulling her behind him. His eyes burned like fire in the glow of the approaching lights. Stay behind me. The vehicles stopped, surrounding the camp in a half circle. Doors hissed open and armed aliens stepped out, their weapons glowing in the dark. At the center was the scar-jawed leader, his grin sharp and cruel. Well, well, the leader mocked. The human who buys garbage. Did you enjoy your prize? The crowd of enforcers laughed. The girl shrank back, tears filling her eyes. It was the same laughter as before, sharp and merciless. Aaron's voice cut through it like a blade. Leave now. The aliens burst into louder laughter. The leader shook his head. You don't give orders here, human. That girl belongs to us. Hand her over and maybe we'll let you crawl away alive. The girl clutched Aaron's sleeve. Her voice was desperate. Let me go, please. If you fight them, you'll die. I can't. She stopped, choking on her words. I can't watch someone else die for me. Aaron turned his head slightly, meeting her eyes. His voice was quiet but unshakable. I told you. I won't abandon you. The girl's lips trembled. She wanted to argue, but her voice broke under the weight of his conviction. The leader raised his weapon, aiming straight at Aaron. Then die with your trash. The night exploded into chaos. Aaron moved like lightning. His arm swept the girl behind the rock for cover as the first shot tore through the grass. With a roar, he charged into the line of enforcers. His fists struck with brutal precision, each movement honed by years of battle. The girl crouched behind the rock, her body shaking as she watched. Fear clawed at her chest, but another feeling rose with it, astonishment. This man, who owed her nothing, fought as if her life was worth everything. Every blow he took, every strike he landed was for her. The enforcers cursed, their confidence slipping as one after another fell to the human's fury. But they were many and the fight was far from over. The girl's hands clenched tightly. She wanted to run, to hide, but her heart screamed another truth. She could not let him fight alone. For the first time in her life, the girl felt the spark of defiance. She was no longer the girl no one wanted. She was someone who had been chosen, and she would not let him stand alone. The night sky burned with streaks of red as blaster fire lit the plain. Smoke curled around the grass and the air shook with the sound of shouts and weapons. Aaron fought in the middle of it all, his fists striking with raw power, his body moving like he had fought 100 battles before. But even he could not block every attack. A blast scorched his arm and he stumbled back for a moment. The scar-jawed leader laughed, his weapon aimed steady. You see, human? Even you will fall. She was never worth the fight. The words cut into the girl's ears sharper than the gunfire. She crouched behind the rock, shaking, tears streaming down her face. Fear screamed inside her to stay hidden. She had always hidden, always bowed her head, always let others decide her worth. But then she saw Aaron fall to one knee. His arm bled, his breath ragged, yet his eyes burned with defiance. Even hurt, he shielded her with his body. Her heart twisted. No one had ever done that for her. Not family, not strangers. Only him, her hands clenched into fists. For so long she had believed their voices, the voices that called her trash, useless, nothing. But this man's voice was different. His words still echoed inside her chest. No one deserves chains. She stood. The enforcers laughed when they saw her. Look, the trash crawls out. Does she think she matters? She will run like always. But she did not run. Her bare feet dug into the dirt. Her silver hair blew in the night wind. Her hands trembled, but her eyes held fire. For the first time, she met their stares without bowing her head. Stop laughing, she whispered. Her voice was weak, but it carried. The crowd jeered louder. What did she say? She dares to speak? Her voice rose, stronger this time. Stop laughing. The scar-jawed leader sneered. And if we don't, what will you do, little slave? The girl's body shook, but she stepped forward anyway. She grabbed a broken metal pipe lying in the grass. Her hands hurt from the weight, but she lifted it high. I will fight. The laughter faltered for a moment, replaced with disbelief. A girl once mocked as worthless now stood ready to strike. Aaron looked up from the ground, blood on his face. His eyes widened, not in fear but in pride. Good, he whispered. Don't let them take that fire from you. The enforcers rushed forward, thinking she was easy prey. The first swung at her, but she ducked, the pipe smashing into his knee with a crack. He fell, howling in pain. Shock rippled through the group. Another charged. She swung wildly, the pipe clanging against his weapon, knocking it aside. Fear still clawed at her stomach, but courage pushed harder. Each strike screamed the words she could not say. I am not worthless. I am not trash. I am alive. Aaron rose again, his strength renewed by her defiance. Side by side they fought, his fists striking with deadly precision, her pipe swinging with desperate courage. The plain filled with chaos. Enforcers fell one by one, their laughter replaced with cries of pain and rage. The scar-jawed leader shouted in fury, but even his confidence began to crack. At last, only he remained standing, his weapon still aimed at Aaron. His sneer returned. You think this changes anything? She is still nothing. Before Aaron could answer, the girl stepped forward. Her body ached, her arms weak, but her voice cut through the smoke. No, she said, her voice steady. I am not nothing. Not anymore. The leader's face twisted in anger. He pulled the trigger in, but the blast never reached her. Aaron lunged, slamming his fist into the leader's jaw. The weapon clattered to the ground. The girl raised her pipe and struck with all her strength. The leader collapsed, silent at last. The battlefield grew quiet. The only sound was the crackle of fire and the girl's ragged breathing. Her arms trembled, the pipe slipping from her fingers, but her eyes stayed firm. Aaron placed a hand on her shoulder. You stood. She looked at him, her chest heaving. I was afraid. He gave a small smile. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's standing anyway. Her tears returned, but this time they were not only of pain. For the first time in her life, she felt something stronger than chains. She felt worth. And as they stood together over the fallen enemies, the stars above seemed brighter, as if the universe itself had heard her defiance. The plain was quiet again. The smoke of battle drifted into the night sky, glowing faintly under the starlight. The fallen enforcers lay scattered across the grass, their laughter silenced forever. The girl stood trembling, the broken pipe slipping from her hands. Her arms ached, her knees shook, but she did not fall. She had stood. She had fought. For the first time in her life, she had not been powerless. Aaron placed a steady hand on her shoulder. His touch was firm, grounding her as her chest heaved with uneven breaths. She turned her head slightly, her silver hair falling back, and looked at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. I thought I was nothing, she whispered. But I fought. I fought because of you. Aaron shook his head. His voice was quiet but strong. No, you fought because of yourself. The strength was always there. You only needed to see it. Her lips parted, but no words came. She lowered her gaze to her freed wrists. The scars from her chains burned, but they no longer felt like proof of weakness. They felt like proof that she had survived. The fire they had built earlier had almost burned out, but in her chest, Something new burned brighter than ever before. Hope. They walked away from the battlefield together. The girl's steps were unsteady, but Aaron walked beside her, never rushing, never letting her fall. She glanced at him from time to time, still unable to understand him fully. Why would someone fight so hard for her? Why would someone choose her when no one else had? At last she spoke. Why do you care? You could have walked away. You could have left me at the auction. Aaron's eyes stayed on the horizon. Because no one deserves to be thrown away, not you. Not anyone. The words wrapped around her heart like a blanket. She wanted to cry again, but this time it was not from despair. It was from something she had not felt in so long, being valued. Days later, they reached a small outpost far from the city. It was quiet, simple, and safe. Traders passed by with food and supplies, but no one asked questions. For the girl, it was a strange world, free of chains and cruel stares. Aaron gave her clean clothes and a small place to rest. She touched the fabric with shaking hands. For so long, she had worn only rags. Now, as she looked at herself, she almost didn't recognize the person in the mirror. She whispered to her reflection, "Who am I now?" From the doorway, Aaron answered softly, "Someone with a future." Her chest tightened. A future. The word felt impossible yet beautiful. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky with gold and red, she sat beside Aaron outside the outpost. For a long time they were silent, watching the light fade. Finally she turned to him. "When they laughed at me, I thought it would never stop. But now when I hear their voices in my head, I also hear yours. You said I wasn't trash. You said no one deserves chains." Aaron's gaze remained on the horizon. "I meant it," she swallowed hard. Her hands clenched on her lap. "Then can I stay? With you?" He finally looked at her, his dark eyes steady. "If that's what you want," her heart pounded. She had expected him to hesitate, to push her away, but he didn't. His words were simple, but they gave her something she had longed for. Choice. "I want to stay," she whispered, "not because I'm afraid, but because you're the first person who saw me." For the first time, Aaron smiled, a real warm smile. "Then stay." As the stars lit up the sky, the girl leaned back, breathing deeply. For years, she had been told she was worthless. For years, she had believed it. But now, sitting beside the man who had chosen her when no one else did, she felt something new growing inside her. She was not trash. She was not nothing. She was someone. The galaxy had tried to break her, but a human had given her back her worth, and together, under the endless sky, they began their new life, not as master and slave, not as nothing and something, but as two souls who had found each other when the world had turned its back. It was the beginning of a story that would not be forgotten. It was the proof of humanity's greatest strength. The ability to see value where others saw none, to fight for hope in the darkest places, to change a life forever.